KJA Global Channel, The Political System and Me. Series 3, Institutions, Power, Rights, and Accountability. Episode 31, My Economy and Fair Markets, Growth with Justice. I used to think the economy was money. Numbers on the news. Exchange rates. Stock markets. Big projects. The language of experts. But the economy is not merely money. The economy is life. It is the daily system that shapes whether people can eat, families can plan, young people can build a future, work is rewarded, businesses can grow honestly, prices remain stable, and opportunity is real. An economy is not neutral. Every economy has a design. Every market has rules. Every rule protects someone, permits something, prohibits something, or shifts risk onto someone else. So the question is not whether a nation has an economy. Every nation has an economy. The question is whether it is fair. This is where our question begins. Can a person build a secure life through honest work, fair competition, predictable rules, and equal opportunity? Or does success depend mainly on political connection, monopoly access, coercion, bribery, hidden privilege, or proximity to power? The economy is not separate from governance. It is governance wearing the clothes of money. Laws shape ownership, institutions enforce contracts, taxes decide who contributes, labor rules shape work, competition rules keep markets open, and public investment directs infrastructure and opportunity. Dictatorship can destroy an economy through command, secrecy, extraction, cronyism, and fear. Fragile democracy may struggle with inflation, corruption, debt, weak institutions, and rising expectations. Federal democracy must share opportunity across regions while protecting common standards and lawful competition. We need growth with justice, markets with fairness, prosperity with dignity. Because a nation cannot remain free if its people cannot survive. The system reveal is market rules, competition, and fair opportunity. The economy is a political system. Rules sit behind every price. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is market rules, competition, and fair opportunity. When food becomes expensive, people often blame the market, as though the market were a force of nature. But prices are shaped by production, transport, taxation, licensing, competition, infrastructure, currency, credit, storage, corruption, conflict, and public policy. A price may reflect scarcity or monopoly. A shortage may reflect drought, hoarding, border restrictions, damaged roads, weak logistics, or corrupt permits. Fair markets require competition, enforceable contracts, predictable rules, and public institutions that do not sell advantage. A fair market is not a market where everyone becomes rich. It is a market where success comes mainly from creating value, serving customers, improving productivity, taking lawful risks, and competing honestly. In a captured market, success comes mainly from proximity to power. Licenses go to insiders. Contracts go to allies. Land goes to connected actors. Competitors are blocked. Losses are transferred to the public. Fair markets distribute opportunity. Captured markets distribute privilege. That is why fair markets are democratic in spirit. They open space for initiative beyond the ruling network. Captured markets are authoritarian in effect because they turn wealth into political dependence and political power into economic advantage. Property rights protect lawful ownership, savings, homes, farms, and businesses from arbitrary seizure. But ownership cannot justify pollution, forced labor, unsafe buildings, fraud, discrimination, or the destruction of another person's rights. Contract enforcement allows strangers to cooperate. Farmers can sell, workers can rely on wages, businesses can borrow, and investors can plan. But contract freedom is not genuine when one side has overwhelming power and the other has no meaningful choice. Labor law, consumer protection, competition law, and financial regulation help prevent freedom of contract from becoming freedom to exploit. Taxation is part of market fairness because taxes fund courts, roads, education, health, security, infrastructure, records, and regulation. A fair system asks who can pay, who benefits, what burden is imposed, and whether rules apply consistently. If the poor pay through hidden fees and unstable prices while the powerful avoid tax through influence, the system transfers wealth upward while claiming neutrality. Labor protections are not an obstacle to growth. They are part of dignified growth. Safe workplaces, fair wages, reasonable hours, freedom from forced labor, protection against discrimination, and lawful organization help ensure that productivity does not depend on human degradation. Consumer protection matters because markets cannot function when deception is profitable and remedy is unreachable. People need accurate information, safe products, fair credit, honest pricing, and ways to challenge fraud. Environmental protection matters because economic activity can create profit by transferring costs to communities, future generations, and ecosystems. Growth that poisons water, destroys land, or displaces people without remedy is not neutral development. Public investment determines whether roads, electricity, schools, health, water, transport, and communications extend opportunity beyond already powerful places. But development without accountability can become organized theft with a modern appearance. A large project may look impressive while contracts are inflated, communities are displaced, debts are hidden, and benefits flow to a narrow network. Economic transition requires sequence and discipline. Public expectations may rise faster than capacity while investors hesitate, inflation threatens, and corruption networks resist reform. A practical reform sequence has 3 stages. First, stabilize the basics. Protect food supply, payments, essential services, currency confidence, basic trade, and the administrative systems that prevent sudden collapse. Second, restore trust. Publish rules, protect contracts, reduce arbitrary licensing, control corruption risks, strengthen courts, and make taxation and public spending more predictable. Third, build capability. Invest in education, infrastructure, technology, competition, professional administration, small business, regional opportunity, and institutions that can sustain fair growth. If fragile democracy cannot deliver a credible sense of fairness, citizens become vulnerable to authoritarian promises again. Federal economic design is peace engineering because it determines how revenue, resources, infrastructure, investment, and opportunity are shared across regions. Producing regions may experience extraction, poorer regions may remain behind, and capital-centered growth may deepen resentment. Growth with justice must therefore reduce domination between classes, regions, and networks. The analytical center of this episode is the public money chain. Revenue, budget, procurement, contract, service or outcome, audit, public report, and correction. Revenue asks where public money comes from and whether collection is lawful, fair, and recorded. Budget asks who decides priorities and whether spending matches public needs. Procurement asks how suppliers are chosen and whether competition is genuine. Contract asks who receives public money, on what terms, and with what conflicts disclosed. Service or outcome asks what was actually delivered. Audit asks who tested the money, records, and performance. Public report and correction ask what citizens learned and what changed after failure. A broken outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be an expensive road, missing medicine, unreliable electricity, a failed market, an inflated contract, or a service that never reaches the public. But the deeper failure may be unfair taxation, hidden debt, a captured budget, restricted competition, false invoices, weak contract management, or an audit that exists only on paper. The chain prevents us from reducing economic failure to one minister, company, or price. It identifies where law, finance, competition, records, capacity, oversight, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens can locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is market rules, competition, and fair opportunity. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, the economy is shaped by concentrated command. Information is restricted, institutions answer upward, property and contracts may depend on loyalty and access to jobs, licenses, land, credit, or public contracts may depend on obedience. In a fragile democracy, formal rules may exist while patronage, corruption, weak courts, inflation, politicized regulation, and inconsistent enforcement make opportunity unstable. Small businesses face rules powerful firms avoid, workers lack remedy, and investment may follow loyalty rather than need. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and legislatures, courts, regulators, auditors, local governments, media, labor, business, and citizens can test economic power. Comparison is a method of judgment, not a slogan or ranking exercise. The viewer should compare who writes the rules, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether transparent policy and accessible remedy exist in practice. The democratic design must survive weak leaders, political disagreement, and changes of government. The minimum guardrails are 1. Fair competition and predictable rules. Licensing, taxation, trade, credit, procurement, and market entry should follow public standards that apply consistently to connected and unconnected actors alike. 2. Property and contract rights with public interest limits. Lawful ownership and agreements should be protected while remaining subject to rights, safety, environmental duties, and due process. 3. Anti-monopoly and anti-corruption enforcement. Institutions need authority, evidence, independence, and remedies to address collusion, market capture, bribery, self-dealing, and abuse of dominance. 4. Worker, consumer, and environmental protection. Growth must not depend on unsafe labor, deceptive products, exploitative credit, discrimination, or the transfer of environmental harm to powerless communities. 5. Transparent economic policy and accessible remedy. Taxes, subsidies, regulations, public investments, debts, contracts, and economic decisions should be explained, recorded, reviewed, and open to lawful challenge. These safeguards work as a system. Competition without courts can be manipulated. Property rights without public limits can protect exploitation. Labor rules without enforcement become decoration. Transparency without remedy becomes observation. And public investment without audit can finance capture. Global relevance. Across political labels, ask who writes market rules, who gains, who bears risk, what information is public, who participates, and whether correction is real. Myanmar relevance. Use ordinary lived experience only where it clarifies the mechanism. Do not treat one organization, authority, business network, region, community, or proposal as the whole country. Separate existing institutions from interim arrangements, local practices, political commitments, and aspirational federal designs. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Ask who writes the rules behind one price you pay and who may be excluded from that market. Consider food, transport, housing, electricity, credit, land, communications, or medicine. Verify. Examine relevant competition, tax, labor, property, licensing, consumer, financial, procurement, or public investment rules. Distinguish a market explanation from a claim that can be supported by records and evidence. Act. Map one price or market barrier to the rules behind it. Identify the responsible institution, who gains, who bears risk, what evidence exists, and which safeguard may be missing. Use lawful methods and protect workers, witnesses, families, confidential records, and sensitive commercial information. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, the evidence, the safeguard or remedy, and one safe next step. The measure of success is not visibility. It is whether you can identify responsibility, evidence, a credible safeguard, and the safest practical action. Can a person build a life through honest work? If the answer is yes, society gains stability. If the answer is no, society becomes restless, angry, and vulnerable to extremist promises. The economy is the political system made edible, breathable, and livable. Growth without justice becomes extraction. Justice without growth becomes fragile. Build fair markets. Protect dignity. Punish corruption. Reward merit. Distribute opportunity. Stabilize the future. A nation's economy is not only how it produces wealth. It is also how it produces belonging. The principle to carry forward is this. The economy is a political system. Rules sit behind every price. Ask yourself, what part of fair markets and economic opportunity have I treated as normal, even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Freedom survives when responsibility becomes habit. In the next episode, we continue with my social contract. Welfare, inclusion, and human security. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system.
Subscribe.
Learn, participate, shape the future. KJA, knowledge justifies authority.